first item on the agenda today is the notification of the appointment of the Chair and Vice Chair of the Children and Young People Committee. At the meeting of Council on the 20th of May 2025, members were pleased to appoint Councillor Edna Murphy as Chair of the Committee and Councillor Johnny Edge as Vice Chair for the municipal year 2025-26.
Thank you very much, and welcome today to the first meeting of this committee in the new council session. Welcome to new members and to returning members, and also to the members of the press and public who have joined us today. The County Council allows filming and photography at its public meetings, so feel free to take pictures or share on social media during this meeting. Please, though, can everyone present turn their phones to silent or vibrate while the meeting is taking place. There's no fire alarm test scheduled for today, so if the fire alarm sounds, I will adjourn the meeting and we will leave the room by the side doors and use the external fire exit to the assembly point in the car park over there. I would remind everyone present that this meeting will be live streamed and a recording will be placed on the Council's website. The meeting will be adjourned every 2 hours for a short comfort break, which is required by our Constitution. I would like to thank Dr. Andy Stone, who is not here today, for his service on the committee to date, as this would have been his last meeting. He represents the Roman Catholic Diocese of East Anglia, and welcome to John Young, our other co-optee. Thank you very much. Item 1 is apologies for absence and declarations of interest. Would the Democratic Services Officer report any apologies or any substitutes, please?
Apologies received from Councillor James Stewart, substituted by Councillor Lorna Dupre and Dr. Andy Stone.
Thank you very much. Does any member wish to declare any disclosable pecuniary interest or non-statutory disclosable interest? Councillor Damery-Holman.
Thank you, Chair. Just regarding non-pecuniary, regarding item 9, it is for the commissioning of services in Harston, which I am local member for.
Thank you very much. Yes,
not a declaration of interest, but 2 procedural points. Firstly, bearing in mind that there are so many new members around this table today, I know it's unorthodox, but I wondered whether it would be worth going around the table and simply saying who we are so that we can kind of orient ourselves into this. And the second point of procedure is the 2-hour break will occur at 4 o'clock, just at the point at which the downstairs tea and coffee point closes. So if it were to be 15 or 20 minutes earlier, there might be a fighting chance of refreshment before we reconvene.
Thank you. 2 really excellent points, if I may say, Councillor Dupre. Would you like to, shall we start with John? Would you like to introduce yourself?
Thank you, Chair. I am John Young. I'm the Diocesan Director of Education for the Diocese of Ely. That's the Church of England Diocese of Ely. I'm a co-opted member of the committee. It's lovely to be here. Thank you.
I'm Councillor Christine Whelan. I'm the member for Ely South Division.
I'm Lorna Dupre, one of the returning members, and I represent the Sutton Division of East Cambridgeshire.
I'm Yasmin Dieter, and I'm the member for Cottenham, Willingham and Rampton.
Lawrence Damari-Homan, member for Sawston and Shelford's Division.
Hello, I'm Councillor Anna Bradnam, and I'm represent the Waterbeach Division.
Hello, I'm Councillor Liam Beckett and I represent Brampton and Buckton.
Good afternoon, I'm Martin Pembroke. I'm the Executive Director for Children Education and Families.
Thank you. So I'm Councillor Edna Murphy and I'm a returning member for Bar Hill Division.
Good afternoon. I'm Councillor Johnny Edge and representing the Wood Ditton Division.
Good afternoon. I'm Tamar Oviatt-Ham and I'm the Democratic Services Officer that supports the committee.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mark Goldsack. I'm returning member representing Soham North and Isleham.
Hello, I'm the new member for Somersham and Erith Division, Charlotte Lowe.
Daniel Devine for Chatteris. Okay.
Andy Osborne, councillor for Roman Bank and Peckover.
Bryony Goodliff, I'm county councillor for Cherry Hinton in Cambridge.
Good afternoon. I am Elliot Tong, the county councillor for Abbey Ward in Cambridge.
Julie Kerr, councillor for St Ives and Witton.
Thank you very much. Welcome to everyone. And perhaps we have to take a note of the time to make sure we can make the refreshments. I think that's a really good suggestion. Thank you. We are being asked to, can I just check that there is no one else who's got an interest that they wish to declare? No, thank you. It's also possible to declare an interest at any point in the meeting if it occurs to you that may be important. We're being asked to approve the minutes of the meeting on the 25th of February 2025 as an accurate record. Does everyone agree?
Brian is the only one who can vouch for it, I think.
Thank you. I see no objections, so we'll take that as that the minutes are approved. Are there any questions on the action log? So for new members, this is a question we ask every meeting, and it's always good to have the opportunity to ask any questions about the action log. So do think about that in future. Thank you. So public questions. We have a question from Ms. Day, I believe. So Ms. Day, welcome. And you have up to 3 minutes, please, to address the committee, and there will be a note taken of the time. So when you're ready, please go ahead.
Is it working? Can you hear me? Right, okay, so I'm just going to read what I wrote because it's probably easier than that because I can sort of go a bit off on a digression.
Could you lean a bit further forward? Just lean a bit or move the microphone. Can I just say it, please? Can you, if you move the microphone nearer you, then it will naturally stay in the right place. Thank you.
How about that? Oh, yes,
perfect.
That sounds better, doesn't it? Yeah.
When you're ready.
When it works, right. Okay, so here we go. So, Chair and councillors, thank you for allowing me to speak. I am a parent to a 20-year-old son with special educational needs and disabilities. Over the years, I've stood at the painful crossroads of unmet need, delayed provision, and systems that too often make families feel invisible. I also offer peer support and advocacy when I can, but my main priority has always been my son. What I want to raise today is a matter of both principle and practice. Cambridgeshire's participation in the Safety Valve Agreement, the Better Value Programme, and the wider SEND Transformation Plan, under the banner of Inclusion for All, has introduced a real and growing concern. When local policies become budget-led rather than needs-led, children's entitlements risk being compromised. This isn't just disappointing, it's potentially unlawful. Statutory rights under the Children and Families Act 2014 must be the starting point for all decisions. Cost pressures cannot justify unmet needs. It is particularly worrying that a revised safety valve proposal has already been submitted to the Department for Education, and yet no councillors, not even those on the scrutiny and audit committees, have been given access to it, let alone proper oversight. This lack of transparency not only undermines trust, it weakens the very democratic accountability that should underpin public decision making. I urge this committee to press for full visibility, scrutiny and public accountability around the reapplication process, and to ensure that any financial planning remains firmly anchored in law and in the rights of the children it affects. And here's my formal question. Can the committee confirm that no part of the Cambridgeshire Safety Valve Agreement, Better Value Programme or SEND Transformation Plan will override or delay lawful statutory entitlements under the Children's and Family Act 2014? And will the Council commit to publicly demonstrating that person-centred outcomes, not financial constraints, are the basis for decisions in education, health and care provision? That's my question.
Thank you very much indeed for that question and for the important preamble. I think we all listened to that with great interest and understanding. We will give you a written response. Officially, it's within 10 working days, but hopefully it'll be sooner than that. Thank you very much for coming in. So yes.
Through you, do we have the right to ask a question as a result of that?
It is fair that we don't normally do that. Hopefully there'll be an opportunity on the agenda for... Well, go ahead, ask your question.
I'd very much like to see a copy of the response to the lady's question. I thank her for sharing the information with us members via email. It certainly raised some questions that I'd like some answers to. So I'd very much like to see a copy of the response that goes out. So when it goes out to Mr. Day, if that can come out to members of this committee at the same time, I'd be very grateful. Thank you.
I think that really is for Miss Day to say if it's acceptable for a letter which is to her, if it can go out. So maybe you would like to share it. Thank you. If she's happy for that, then okay, it's on the website. Thank you very much for that. Yes, indeed. Councillor Bradnam.
And I was going to ask to see the same response. So I'm very glad that Ms. Day is happy that we see that response. Thank you.
Thank you. That's great. We'll do that. May I move on to the next item, please? It's our key decisions. This is the first one, which is the Education Capital Delivery Routes and the update of the Section 106 site specification. So would Alison Kramer please come to the table and speak to us about it? Alison Kramer, the Assistant Director for Education. Thank you.
Thank you. There are three recommendations in this report, and the committee has recommended to approve the approach to porting capital contributions to academy trusts to carry out expansion schemes at Cambridgeshire schools, to approve the approach to potential developer delivery of new Cambridgeshire schools, and to approve the updated site specification for new school sites. And I'd like to take this opportunity to read through a few key points in relation to these recommendations, in addition to you already having had the paper. Historically, the delivery of new schools and school expansions have been led by the council. This paper is recommending that the default route for these projects remains with the council, but that in specific circumstances, delivery by academy trusts and developers is also considered.
The council would always provide the school brief, clearly specifying the places and the type of school that is needed. And this specification would be based on the detailed analysis of demand for school places by area. And the final recommendation in the paper is an update on the site specification, which is separate to the school building specification that comes at a later stage in the process of developing new schools and would be tailored to each individual school project. In relation to the recommendation to port funding to multi-academy trusts, this is specifically about the expansion of existing schools. Many Cambridgeshire schools are in academy trusts, which have the detailed knowledge of their school sites and directly receive stock condition funding from the Department for Education to maintain and improve the condition of their grounds. When an academy is identified as suitable for expansion to meet an increased need for additional school places, this is currently delivered through the Council's Education Capital team. And this paper is proposing that where a multi-academy trust is interested in self-delivery at an expansion scheme of one of their schools, where the council has identified the need for more places, and only where specific conditions are met, that funding is ported to the multi-academy trust to deliver the scheme through a grant funding agreement. This has the benefit of enabling a trust to potentially rectify suitability and condition issues for which they receive direct funding at the same time as a capital build, which would enable the trust to maximise the funding and the site expertise. In relation to developer-led delivery, this recommendation is to support the principle of considering developer delivery as an option for the development of a new school. Currently, dependent on the scale of the development, the council would receive Section 106 funding for the development of a new school. In section 3.19 of the paper, it sets out guidance that was published in 2023 by the Department for Education on developer delivery of new schools as an option that can be explored as it has the potential to provide best value for money. This would position the council as a key stakeholder rather than leading the scheme if it was to be used as an option in the future. But if it was identified as a potential option for any given future development, this would be brought back to committee for decision and with full information. And the final recommendation in relation to the site specification as part of the Section 106 agreements is presented here as it is an updated specification to enable negotiations with developers to provide a parcel of land of good quality with the right services and in the right location for a school site. As set out in paragraph 3.13 of the report, the site specification will need minor changes for each Section 106 agreement on an individual basis to ensure it reflects site-specific factors. For example, how big the school needs to be relevant to the size of the development. But it should be noted that this is separate to the school building specification that would come at a later stage in the process of developing a new school and would be tailored to each individual school project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Councillor Goodliffe.
Thank you, Chair. So I totally understand why we're looking at doing this. We've had lots of issues in the past with waiting for buildings to be delivered and the original S106 numbers not then tallying anywhere near with the cost of buildings. But my questions are, would we still have enough involvement for the Academy Trust or indeed local authority schools in the future for their input into the design and the layout and the things that they would require in the building, and indeed things like community space and use? And would we also be imposing our own carbon zero requirements that we currently have for the buildings? Thank you.
Thank you. In relation to this, some of those details would be explored at the point of taking forward a proposal for developer-led delivery. There would be, and it would need to follow very clear guidance in relation to procurement regulations and planning permission. So it would be, I think a lot of those factors would be explored at the point we move to an individual recommendation in relation to that.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dupre.
Thank you. Two questions from me. The first one, can you confirm that what's being suggested here is that these are options for handling future developments of schools rather than the way all schools will be handled?
Yes, I can confirm that. So in relation to the academy-led expansion projects, they would be considered on a case-by-case basis, and there would be a very rigorous assessment of a number of factors that the Academy Trust would be required to meet in order for us to enter into a grant agreement. And that would be if an Academy Trust expressed an interest at the point we'd identified that we have identified with them that we want their school to expand because we need the places. It may be that an Academy Trust doesn't want to do that, and the council would lead it. So the default position is it would be council led, but that this would be a consideration. In relation to developer led delivery, at this stage it's about building it in as an option into Section 106 agreements that can be considered by the council, and again would come back to committee for decision. And the final one is in relation to the specification for new school sites. That would go into now the appendix for Section 106 agreement as an enhanced specification for the land that would be required for a school site. So the first two are options, but the final recommendation would go ahead as the new enhanced specification for Section 106 agreements.
Thank you. And my second question rather builds on the question from Councillor Goodliff, which is, and excuse my ignorance, I'm not normally a member of this committee and I'm substituting short notice today for this. I'm assuming that when a new school is built, there are standards and specifications that are set down either locally or nationally. Are those going to be the same specifications, and how do we ensure that? I'm rather wanting to probe a bit about section 3.8 of the report on developer-led delivery, where the key phrase at the end is that the council would be positioned as a key stakeholder without the power to heavily influence the design of the school. To what extent would we retain a design influence? Would the developers have to abide by particular local or national codes? And I hate to kick at a wound that I hope is healing, but you know, there was an issue not that long ago where there was an aspect of the delivery of a new school which proved to be more controversial, I think, than had originally been thought. How does that play out in these scenarios where other people are delivering these schemes and we are simply influencing but not heavily?
Yes, there is Department for Education guidance and specification in relation to new school builds that would need to be adhered to, as well as what would be set out in the planning permission terms. But you are right, the influence of the design would be more limited in the event that it was a developer-led delivery. The council's influence would be reduced in that instance, but national standards must be followed.
Thank you. Councillor Damry-Hellman.
Thank you, Chair. One question and a comment. I'll start with my question. As a new member, I've not seen previous iterations of the site specification. Could you let us know if there have been any major changes to it, or is it business as usual, essentially?
The changes to it are that there's sort of clearer and more specific wording, and some of the most significant changes are that it provides much clearer guidance on the quality of playing fields. It provides a maximum of active road frontage to ensure that safeguarding requirements can be met, and there's clearer wording around some other elements such as air quality for the site.
Great, that's wonderful to hear that such important changes have been made. Broadly speaking, I think all three recommendations are quite sensible. I really welcome, both in your presentation and in responses to colleagues' questions, the assurance that this is just exploring options, which I think is probably something that we can all support. Anything we can do to get more schools built more efficiently and particularly cost effectively. My other comment was just on paragraph 3.11, looking at the top of page 20 here. Great to see that we've actually already got this in place with some major developments in the county, drafted into the section 106. So the last sentence is really, really important to me. Just saying that particular or individual recommendations to particular sites will be brought back to the committee with full detail really, really welcome. I'm sure all members of the committee will be very happy to see these things, but perhaps as these potential development opportunities emerge, if we could be kept abreast of developments around the development prior to that stage, you know, pre-application, etc., I think we'd all be grateful. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very
Chair,
much.
could I ask, please, that presenters turn their microphones off when they're not speaking? That would be really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you indeed. Do you want to respond to that at all?
To say yes, that would be the case, and these would be key decisions that would need to come back to committee. But absolutely appreciate the note for briefings as well during the process. Yes, absolutely.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bradnam.
Thank you, and thank you for your explanation to us. I've got a number of questions with your permission, Chair. So going in the order of the agenda, one of the things that concerns me is at 3.8, we've got the fact that, or the proposal that instead of supplying the land, the developer would be delivering the school. And the concern for me is, would this general principle also apply to expansion of schools which are on land currently owned by the county council? And what would be the implications of that if it's now currently occupied by an academy trust, for example? I don't know if that exists in any cases, but I'm just mindful of that. And so it's the question of what happens to the ownership of land. Obviously, mainly in this situation, we're talking about developers who own land being asked to contribute a school as part of a bigger development. But what about where we still have councils on council land, schools on council land? Shall I do them one by one? That's probably the easiest.
Yes, please, if you'd like to respond to that. Thank you.
Thank you. So this proposal in relation to developer-led delivery relates to new school builds. And in the case of this, the land would stay under the ownership of the developer throughout the construction period. Once the construction project is complete, the site, including the buildings, would transfer to council ownership. And then if an academy trust were to run the school, which is currently the way to open a new school, the site would then be leased to the trust under a standard 125-year lease, in the same way as if the council had delivered the new school.
Thank you very much. So that explains how the land moves around, or the ownership of the land switches around, which is helpful. You have said also in 3.11, I'm a bit surprised to see this. The option for developer delivery has been drafted into S106 agreements for several future strategic residential sites, e.g. Waterbeach RLW site. Now, I thought the S106 for Waterbeach RLW had been set back in 2019. So I'm just a bit surprised, unless the S106 has only just come forward recently. Can you just explain why? Has that been revised recently?
Unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that question. We will need to come back with a response to that.
Thank you. Okay. And related also, because we know that the delivery of the school at the Waterbeach site has been delayed partly because of the child yield not being what was anticipated at the time. I thought of the the S106, but it has been on the radar that it would be unhelpful to deliver it too early, even though there are children at the phase 1 site at Waterbeach who are currently going, for example, to Waterbeach Primary. I say this as a specific, but it would apply wherever a new school were built. So meantime, there's people living at the phase 1, but taking their children to the existing primary school. Because if the new school were to be delivered, let's call it early, compared to the child yield, then that might have the effect of drawing children away from the existing Waterbeach Primary School. So what I'm wondering in this question is, how are we going to manage the timing of delivery? At present, we can handle that as a negotiation, but given that we know that it can have a devastating effect on the currently existing primary school, if a new school is built close by, it can suck all the children away. So how is that going to be managed under this arrangement?
We would look at that on an individual basis. As you've correctly said, we very carefully monitor pupil numbers and role projections to determine at what point a new site is built. And it would very much be work in partnership with the Department for Education, who award the funding agreement to Multi Academy Trust to take on a school, the local authority and the developer. But I don't have specifics at this stage on how an individual proposition would work.
And with your permission, just a couple more, which I'll do together.
Could we just have one more, and could you keep it brief?
It'll be together. So there's, under the legal implications and the risk implications, you've said you'll bring applications of this type back to committee, which is useful to know. And under risks, I'm just wondering if there is any risk that a developer takes on an obligation and then is unable to deliver it financially. And there is also a risk that expansion schemes won't be delivered as expected, as is said at 6.3. So I just wondered how you felt we might manage that.
There would be very specific advice taken from legal advice and procurement advice before entering into any such agreement with the proposal, in order to try to mitigate as much of that as you possibly could.
Applications will come back to committee.
Yes, they will. Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Goldsack.
Thank you. Firstly, thank you for a complex report, good report, and it's I think quite an exciting development, if I'm honest with you. I'm really looking for one guarantee out of this, and that is that the responsibility for building schools is Cambridgeshire County Council's. You are looking at delegating the task. No problem with that. I think that's a reasonably principled approach. However these contracts are set up, and I welcome that they're going to come back before committee, etc., but you must look at the basis that you can delegate the task, but you cannot delegate the responsibility. So there are good trusts out there. There are not so good trusts out there. We all deal with them day to day, I would imagine, or week to week. So I just want to make sure, I'm asking you for your assurance here that the task of building this can be delegated, but the responsibility remains Cambridgeshire County Council's.
Yeah, I'll take that one, just because so the sufficiency duty sits with the local authority. So we're not talking about delegating responsibility for that sufficiency duty. We're talking exactly as you've said about the process, and we'll ensure that, as Alison said, that there's real rigour around the checks and balances within our established governance arrangements. And as we've said, anything that progresses will come back to committee if it reaches that threshold for key decision. So we're not delegating the accountability for the sufficiency of school places.
And come back through you, Chair. Just one quick point. We had the issue raised earlier that was in the previous term, the school and the sprinkler system. I don't want to go all over that again, but that's a perfect example of a change to the build that was of significant importance and resulted in significant results. So again, I would like to make sure that in that understanding and owning the responsibility, any such change control of that nature does come back before this committee and not left at an officer's decision.
Yep, we can give that reassurance.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the answers.
Thank you. And I believe Councillor Demery-Holman has just got a quick follow-up question.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and sorry for coming back. I just realised that Councillor Stewart isn't with us today, and he had a very salient point. Do we, in particularly with recommendation B, are we looking to just be providing mainstream schools, or is it also, are we going to use this option to explore possibly providing SEND schools and things of that nature? Thank you.
Yes, it would be all types of school as we've identified need and demand. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, members, for your questions, and thank you, officers, for your helpful answers. We move to the vote now. Can I ask, and co-opted members are also able to vote on this report. Can I ask those in favour of the recommendations, please, to raise their hands now? Thank you. I believe that's unanimous. Thank you very much. Moving on to the next item. Thank you very much indeed. Moving on to the next item, block purchase arrangements for children's provision in Cambridgeshire. Sharafat Ali is the report author and hopefully will introduce it. He's not here. Should we move to the next item while we... it's recommissioning the early intervention mental health services. Right. So we're just going to temporarily move to the next item while we locate Mr. Ali. Can we move please to item 7, which is recommissioning of early intervention mental health services for children and young people. This is going to be introduced by Sally Cartwright, Director of Public Health. Welcome.
Thank you. So the paper is asking the committee to agree to continuing the public health contribution to the United service, which is early identification and intervention services for children and young people's mental health. It is joint commissioned with the ICB NHS organisation as the lead commissioner, and they have the majority of the funding for the service. So they put in around 1.8 million per year, and we have been contributing 350,000 per year, and Peterborough have also been contributing. The ask is that we continue this arrangement for the next 2 years, and during this time we will also be reviewing as a system the children and young people's mental health provision, and this is an action that's held by the Health and Wellbeing Board as a priority around working together for children and young people's mental health. So this piece of work will really look at what's the existing provision as the system, co-designing a new model, looking at outcome measures, making sure that they're really robust and that we have a much stronger prevention approach across the system. So that work's underway and will be finished this year. But in the meantime, the request is for an extension of the funding for this service as the model that we currently have moving forward for the next 2 years. During this time, we will also be looking at the outcome measures, because at the moment, you'll see in the paper, we recognise that they're not very robust in terms of being able to say what outcomes have been achieved for children and young people. Although we can see the activity, the outcome measures themselves aren't very robust at the moment. So we'll be working on those over the next period. So the service details are in the paper, but it's really about having a single front door and a much more joined up service provision. So we have one provider, which then subcontracts and has a network with the other providers to make it a much more smooth pathway for children and young people. And this will continue in the new approach. So I'll pause there. I think the paper and the recommendations are self-explanatory, so I'll open up to any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, it was a very interesting and full report. Thank you very much indeed. Do we have questions, please, for Ms. Cartwright? Councillor Goldsack.
Sorry, I really don't mean to dominate the questions, but thank you again. A really good report, really interesting piece of the operation. Is there any SLA agreement between us and you, United, for the council and United for the delivery? Or do we just take the output in the appendix as that's what they've done?
So with the ICB as the lead commissioner, they will have the contract, and then we have an arrangement and we're joint contracting meetings with the ICB to look at the outcome measures. But the ICB as the lead commissioner has the contract with United.
So just going through you, Chair, what you said there is key to the answer to my question, which is to look at the outcome measures. Are we looking at the measures and then the outcomes against them, or are we looking at what the outcomes are? So is there a service level agreement to which the ICB hold you, United, accountable for what they should be delivering?
Yes, so that will be through their contract and the service specifications. So there will be key performance measures within there. My point around the outcome measures, though, is that at the moment, those indicators are quite processy and quite activity-based, rather than saying for those children that have gone through, and they've had good reach. So we've increased the uptake of mental health services and the numbers of children that are coming through services. But what the indicators that are in the contract aren't great at is saying, and what have been the longer term benefits for those children and young people. So that's what we'll be looking at in more detail going forward, as both with the ICB and us as our contribution to the contract.
Okay, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, do come back if there's any further questions, because it's a really important area. Councillor Dupre.
Thank you. The risk implications talk about the risk of not recommissioning the service with the ICB. However, I'm aware, as other members will be, that the ICB is part of the ICB structure nationally is going through a period of considerable turbulence. Is there any risk to this arrangement that arises from the very significant changes that are happening to ICBs, and particularly the local one with whom we are proposing to work on this?
So you are absolutely correct. There's lots of changes in ICB world at the moment, and looking at they will have a bigger footprint going forward as the overarching strategic executive kind of footprint for the ICB. But that being said, there still will need to be these local services, and we'll need to work with them on, for us, me as Director of Public Health for Cambridgeshire, and likewise in other areas, what that means for our services in Cambridgeshire. So there will be a need to still have some of these more local contracts and service delivery. I think it is a risk that we just need to be mindful of, but it doesn't stop there being this population need that we need to address. And from my perspective as Director of Public Health, we still need that in Cambridgeshire, and we'll still need to have this more local service delivery.
Can I just come back on that? Because it's not just a question of the footprint, it's not just a question of reorganisation. As I understand it, it's very significant reductions in funding per head, and also a real shift in the way in which the focus of the ICB. So I'm wondering whether that may also have an impact.
I think it's something for us to keep an eye on, but the focus of the ICBs will be much more around strategic commissioning. So the commissioning element and the accountability of what services delivered locally will be much more of a focus. So where there's cost savings, it will be on sort of higher up efficiencies and certain elements of what they currently deliver not happening anymore, not the commissioning bits. So I think for this, it's low risk, but I think because there's so much uncertainty still in that space, I think we just need to be really mindful of it.
Thank you. Councillor Goodliff.
Thank you. I'd like to echo others on the report and how in depth it is. I do have one query on 2.1.5. This mentions that you have, or there is, qualitative data, but no quantitative data. I know that this is a tricky area, but I also know there are methods of getting quantitative data in this area, particularly using strength and difficulties questionnaires, and other means are available. Is there any way we can push for some of these cases to bring back qualitative data? I know it's not quantitative data, sorry. I know it's not applicable in all cases, but there should be some element of this where we can get some figures on the efficacy or not of the interventions being used.
Yes, and that's absolutely what we'll be looking at, getting more robust going forward. So that's the next step. Once we've agreed, hopefully, that we can carry on funding, that the review of the measures and how we know that the service is having an impact on those people through a quantitative approach is what we'll be focusing on. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Tong.
Just to expand on that point, because you have stated we'll try and get some more information on these sorts of measures by the end of the year. Is there a rough timeline for when that might happen? Because I think this is a really important service. It's a great thing we're doing, and it would just be fantastic to get a bit more detail, both to reassure us that everything's going okay, but also so that information can be of use to just people around the county.
So I think what we're looking at is what those measures should be, rather than having retrospectively all the data available. So we may be able to get some retrospective data of those that have already come through and how successful it's been, but it's more around getting the measures right. So going forward, we can assess the impacts from this point on. So I'm not sure, is that accurate? Yeah.
Yeah, that's accurate. Would it be useful if I just very quickly tell you the kind of data we get? So the information we get from the providers include information about how long they're waiting for, the kind of needs that are coming in, and the kind of service that are being provided. We do, in kind of answer to Councillor Goodliffe's question, we do get some information from some of the partners based on the journey and the outcomes measures. It's difficult because of the way the reporting is set up at the moment to have that for all of the partners in a way that is easy to report on. So there is some work being done on that. So in the proposal to do the extension, the ICB are committing to keeping the funding envelope the same for that extended time, but looking at being able to clarify the reporting within that to enable us to get that information. So that probably helps in terms of Lorna's question as well around the ICB looking at committing for that time period at the same funding envelope.
Thank you. Councillor Goldsack.
Yeah, if I come back to my previous point, which has also been picked up by a couple of other members, I think we may be just slightly talking chalk and cheese here. So let me try and qualify it a little bit. When we're commissioning anything, we must determine a set of deliverables that we expect in return for the payment of those commission services. What I'm asking for is, have we got anything that determines in the period up to June 26, when this runs out, we expected this, we had this. Now, you're saying you may be able to get that, but what I haven't heard is that we've got a set of defined measurements and goals that we were hoping to attain from the service. I think I share my colleagues at the end of it there. I think it reads like a wonderful service, and there's a real growing need out there. I'm sure we see it every day. My family work in primary education. I certainly hear about it very lot. But I just feel that in a commissioning exercise here, we're slightly being asked to fund 2/3 of a service that we don't really have a definition of what that service is set to deliver. What are the measurements? What are the goals? What are the objectives of the service?
Yeah, and so going forward for the next 2 years, that's what we're going to be working on over the next few months to make sure that's really clear. When it was set up initially, when we first commissioned it, the measures, as I said, weren't very focused on the outcomes. So I think there was targets around numbers of children coming through and about establishing the network and having a single front door and waiting times. But actually, the outcome measures that we've talked about around patient improvement haven't really been built in. So that's what we need to do now going forward. So this gives us an opportunity to make that more robust for the next 2 years.
So do we have to commission that before because we may want to include in those deliverables something that's unpalatable to the supplier? Could easily do that. I just think we've got cart before horse here. And it concerns me a little bit here that what we're doing is we're commissioning services and then saying, right, now we'll work with you to see how they're delivered. Actually, what we should be saying is what we'd like delivered is this. Can you commit to delivering it? And this is how much it's going to cost. Do you think I'm wrong? Or do you think if I'm right, then that puts a different perspective for me on the whole paper, which I was hoping to support. But if we can't determine what the services are before buying them, I've got a real problem with our procurement and our commissioning methods.
Did you want to come in?
Yeah. So if I can kind of talk about how this was commissioned in the first place. So just to say, it's 1.8 million from the ICB. So ours is 350,000. So they do have the majority of the funding that goes into this. Our funding is particularly looking at ensuring the early intervention and prevention elements of that, making sure that the partnership with the voluntary sector providers provide a really excellent front door. So there's some very definite performance indicators around how the front door works, how the waiting times work, looking at the ways that the system is offering those services. Now, when the initial contract was set up, it was done as on the back of a lot of co-production with young people, and so the KPIs are based around a lot of I statements. So there is a lot of information that we get back about how young people feel that this service has helped them. So at the moment, that's how our outcome measures are coming to us, because the initial contract, as well as having those KPIs that Sally's outlined in terms of waiting times, access, and numbers, were based on looking at outcomes related to how young people and their families felt the service had met their needs. We think that actually that's a very subjective way of doing that, and we would like to have some more robust outcome measures. So that's what we're looking at building into the work moving forward. Did that help?
I think that's really informative and good information, but didn't answer my question. I think I've realised there's not an answer to my question. I think what I've realised here that is the initial commissioning. I'm going to use a word I don't particularly like here, but it was very woolly, and we've seen how it's gone. And we're now up for recommissioning, and I would have expected a set of deliverables for any supplier, because at the moment we're dealing with one, and it looks like the best one to go with from the report. But we're dealing with one supplier, and I'm turning around and saying, what is it we're buying and what is our expectations from this? I don't want to be on a league table or anything like that. I'm just saying that we're spending, albeit the ICB are spending 1.8, we're spending 0.335, right, which is still considerable amount of taxpayers' money. And I want to know what we're getting for the service. And at the moment, I'm afraid you can't tell me. You're hoping to get, and you're going to determine by what they do deliver. If any other business was run like that, they'd be in a lot of trouble. You know, I'm going to fill my shop with vapes, and I'm going to sell them. That's my business plan. Well, no one's going to come and buy them. Hang on a second. So I'm feeling very uncomfortable about it. I'm sorry, Chair, I've taken too long, but that's my decision. It's up to other members to determine theirs. I think we need more scrutiny at the front end before we're commissioning such services.
Thank you. I think in fairness, I think that the paper does describe the things that we want out of this service, and what we are buying is a large number of professionals who are going to spend their time in a particular way addressing a particular problem. And what we're looking for, and we're all looking for, and I think in recommissioning this work, we're also looking for this, is more evidence to support the theory that these services are effective. Because they're good practice, so we assume they will be effective, but we need more evidence of that. And that's not quite the same thing. That's an outcome as opposed to a thing that we are buying, if you see what I mean. So I feel that is reasonably clear. But if it doesn't strike you that way, that is absolutely your prerogative. I've got Councillor Bradnam, then I've got Councillor Osborne.
Thank you. So I just wanted to check back on, let's see, Appendix 1. I think it was said in the report that this Appendix 1, United Activity and Feedback, was the evidence that the service had been delivering what was agreed at the outset when it was commissioned. And this gives the I feeling, experience of the young people, which is indeed useful. But and then the second appendix gives us the feedback from the professionals who have been delivering the service and their perception of what has been delivered. So I just wanted to check, are you saying that we don't actually have any record of the numbers of people who've gone through or experienced or been touched by these services? I would have thought we might have some indication of that. And I appreciate qualitative data, and it comes back to the point that Councillor Goodliff made earlier on, is I think it would be extremely useful. I'm not questioning that this is good, and I'm absolutely support it, but I think going forward it would be very useful to have some more quantitative data about how many people have used these services, how many people have maybe been assisted. Obviously we can't tell what would have happened if they hadn't been through it, so that's not possible to pin down. But if we got something that tells us how many young people are being influenced by this, it would be helpful. Do you think that might be possible?
Yes, so we do have numbers that are going through the Access Hub. So if you look in figure 1, it has per month, so it's not the total number, but it shows the numbers that come through the hub approximately per month, and then where they get directed to. So we can break down that data in terms of activity and process further.
Thank you. Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Chair. I actually share Councillor Goldstack's concerns and totally agree with what he's saying. We don't really know what we're going to get. You need to have a target to get to, whether it's going to be services or a building or whatever, and achieve that target. Once you've achieved the target, you're successful. That's my view anyway.
Thank you. I've got a question if there are no other. Councillor Tong.
This isn't a question, more of a point. I just wanted to make the statement that I do really appreciate those concerns. And I think there is evidence in this report back that a good service is being offered. I just wish it went into a bit more depth, particularly in terms of quantitative data, so I could be more sure of myself in that. I am going to vote for the recommendations, I think, but it would just be great if there were a little bit more detail next time.
Thank you. I'm sure that's a sentiment that is shared widely. I have a question. Obviously very supportive of this paper. Thank you. It's excellent. It's also really important area. Huge amount of unmet need, and that is really what I'm concerned about. The pathways are set out, and I think there may be more complexity in the pathways in reality than perhaps is evidence in the high level report. I'm particularly thinking around 2.2.5, pathways into United. Areas like or when young people reach a certain age and maybe their GP, the parents, whatever, want them to be referred to treatment or further care, and they don't want to. What is do you have a sense of the unmet need for mental health services for young people?
So in terms of young people, because this is obviously an early intervention service, it's all a voluntary service accessed by young people. So in those situations when a parent may be asking for help but the young person doesn't want it, the services will offer sources of support for the parent, offer signposting to then pass on to that young person, and offer an easy way in for when that young person is ready. This service also sits very closely with the Someone to Talk To service, which is also commissioned by the local authority that Centre 33 run, which offers open access for young people in a number of hub locations across the county, which is really helping in terms of that access for people to be able to just walk in. The self-referral that is mentioned in the paper is relatively new, but is already being really well thought of by our providers. They're saying that the information they're getting from parents and from young people who are referring in themselves is often of a higher quality, because it's really well thought through in terms of their needs. But there's still kind of work to do in terms of ensuring that we've got it right for all groups. But yeah, it's not easy in that kind of early intervention space.
No, very well understood. Thank you. Councillor Whelan.
Yeah, just a point. What I really welcome is the extend services to meet mental health needs of young people up to the age of 25. Often when you get young people who are reaching 17 years old, and then they get to the end of what would be the child or young child sort of area, then going onto a waiting list to actually go into the adult waiting list for help. Sometimes that waiting list can be very, very long, and often 2 or 3 months from transitioning from a 17-year-old to an 18-year-old. I think the actual extending that need up to the age of 25 is really important for mental health for young people, especially for those who are going from the upper end into early adulthood. And I think that's really important. And I certainly welcome, obviously, Centre 33, the work they're doing as well for mental health for young people as well. I think that they're a really important charity, and I think they're great. And I just making that point that it is good to see that the needs are going up to the age of 25.
Thank you very much. If it's really quick, Councillor Bredon.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to make the point that this committee made an undertaking to take our provision for young people up to age 25 some years ago in order to exactly cover that gap.
Thank you very much. So, members, thank you for all the points made, and thank you very much for answering all our questions. This is, we've been asked to approve the recommendations, and it is also the case in this matter that co-opted members can vote on it. So if I could ask for all those in favour, raise their hands now. Thank you. And all those against? And all those abstaining? Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that item. So could we please move back to the previous item? We now have Richard Hills, who is kindly going to step in and present the case for the block purchase arrangements for children's provision in Cambridgeshire. Thank you very much. Welcome, Richard. If you'd like to let us have a summary of the, I assume we've read it, but if you'd like to give highlights, that would be very welcome.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Apologies, my head of services had to step away, and I'm taking the slot. Yes, this is a paper to ask to commission a number of blocks from our dynamic purchasing systems. We've got a number of DPSs in place, and we're looking to pilot really a number of blocks across a range of services, including supported accommodation, residential, ISEPs, and Paula and Rosa here will assist me in some of the detail on that. But this is quite important for children's. This is us stepping into the space to get some block. You usually use block to do two things, and we use it quite effectively in adults. It's usually where supply is difficult to get hold of and where we need to control price. And when it comes to the children's market, we need to do both at the moment, especially seeing the amount of children we need to place out of county. So this links to the wider residential strategies and other things I'm sure this committee have seen over the past couple of years as we try to take control really of the market as a whole and work alongside our providers in partnership and build longer term strategic relationships, and blocks are another way of allowing us to test that and to start that. In terms of the quick intro, I was just going to hand to Paula to do just a summary of the numbers of we want to get for block for children in care, and then to Rosa on the summary of the blocks we want to get related to SEND. So if I just do that, it'll only take a minute, and then we'll open up to questions.
Very much. Hold the microphone near to you. Thank you.
Hello. So we're looking to undertake a mini competition from our DPS, as Richard said. We'd like to block purchase 15 beds for supported accommodation. That's for children who are 16 and 17 years old, who typically need less supervision and support as they ready for adulthood. We've identified that there are some children that need reduced numbers of hours, so we're looking to purchase 15 beds with 10 hours or less support that will reduced the weekly fee as well to the council. We're looking to purchase those at a ceiling of £500 a week, which will achieve the savings outlined in the paper. In addition, we're looking to purchase 10 residential beds from children's residential homes. That will increase our accessibility to the beds in county to keep our children from Cambridgeshire in Cambridgeshire. There's reduced savings attached to that because we've been very successful with our contractor providers at keeping them at a below average cost compared to those nationally. However, what that is going to do is increase the provision to keep children close to their families and communities. And there is some savings attached to that, and we would look to maximise that for the council. Shall I pass on to Rosa?
Hello. Similarly, with SEND, Children in SEND, we are looking at commissioning up to 60 placements, so a block of 10 for ISEPs. So again, keeping children closer to the county, ideally within. The block contracts allow us to negotiate better cost on the core costs of the price of those school placements. And in addition to that, out of school tuition, which some people may know as alternative provision here. Again, commissioning up to 60 placements in smaller blocks of 10, but imposing a bracket, a threshold of what that may look like per hour, up to 15 hours per week. So this is just to ensure that we, again, keep children local and those placements are cost effective to the council. But our main aim is the right help at the right time. And that will enable us by identifying that, putting those children in the right spaces, education.
Thank you very much indeed. We welcome this report. Who would like to ask a question? Councillor Bradnam.
Thank you very much for your report. In principle, I support this, but I'd just like to check, are the independent, here we are, yes, the independent special school placements, are they inclusive of places like Red Balloon learner centres, that sort of thing, or are they more formalised? I mean, Red Balloon maybe.
So the placements that we'll be making, there will be for providers that are currently on our DPS. So they would have gone through the relevant due diligence, quality assurance, and we've already got those provider relationships in place. So I wouldn't be able to tell you whether they're on the DPS or not, but we can check.
Thank you very much. Councillor Edge.
Thank you. This is really for clarification. I think that the paper sets out a clear kind of concern around a lot of placements out of county. And just from what I've heard there and some of what I've read within the paper gives a little bit of ambiguity as to whether these block placements are only for block placements within county in order to address that. So can I just ask for that reassurance?
Yeah, in Cambridgeshire for supported accommodation and for residential children's homes.
And likewise for education. However, it might just be that they're on the borders, just because where children are located at home, it may be that they are closer to that bordering school, if that makes sense.
Thank you. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Forgive me, I don't understand the details of how the mini competition actually works in practice, but I see the figure of £60 per hour, and in 2.16.3, the hourly costs currently vary between £60.75 and £148.31, all of which are above that £60 figure. So my question really is around how confident you are that the suppliers will be able to provide a good quality service at that price point without them having to cut corners.
So we have been working with our providers. We've been meeting with them at Provide Forums. We've still got more conversations with them to be had with exactly how the model will look. Just to reassure you, we do have many providers under the £60 as well. So it's basically maximising, it's that threshold up to £60. So it's just maximising those providers that could offer the same model of tuition to our young people, but being very clear as to what we want for what price.
If I could just add as well, the commissioners do an awful lot of benchmarking and look outside of just Cambridgeshire. I mean, this is a national market, so they use national pricing tools like CareCubed, but they're already doing and then well networked across the region in terms of what other counties are paying. So there's that constant analysis, and that's why we think we can get the block at this rate. But there is a test and learn to this, and that's the balance between finding the right market rate and the right quality.
Councillor Bradnam.
Thank you. I just wanted to check if we do proceed with a block purchase arrangement, to what degree do we monitor the delivery at those? So I'm looking at supported accommodation, and do we have some flexibility to withdraw if we feel the delivery isn't good enough for our children?
Yes, so we have within our contract terms and conditions, we have a number of measures and leverages. So we have quality assurance visits. We would actually go out. Supported accommodation and children's residential homes are also quality assured. They're registered with Ofsted, so we would monitor those. We have quarterly contract management meetings, which we would look to increase should we block purchase, to make sure that we are getting the quality that we want. And also our team oversee the placements into those provisions. So we would be having that regular conversations with them as well. We've spoken to legal around the exit clauses, around quality, but also around service delivery. And as Richard said, we've learned from adults as well. So we've met with adults about how they manage their contracts and exits from those contracts as well. So legal have had oversight of this paper, and they're also working with us on the terms and conditions to make sure that they are balanced and give us those leverages should we need them.
And we do have the flexibility to remove.
So children can be moved on if we feel that they're unsafe or it's not the right provision for them. We would move them on, and we would exit that contract if they're not providing the quality of service that we require.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edge.
Yes, I just want to kind of touch on the opposite side of that, really, in the sense that other councils have done block booking before. This wouldn't be the first time, and therefore, there is evidence to suggest that this might be successful. The recommendation is suggesting an extension period after 12 months. If we were seeing positive impact, and therefore, as a result of that, I would assume financially as well as for our children, would there be the ambition to kind of move the blocking scheme on further forward from that?
Absolutely. In a nutshell, yes. I think this is a conservative look in terms of the numbers you're seeing in this report. They're not massive, so it's a small, manageable block. Because coming back to the previous councillor's point, it is important that we absolutely contract manage these blocks. Blocks are great in terms of building strategic partnerships, but if uncontract managed, you end up with voids, you end up with poor performance, and actually it can be more costly than the more expensive spot you were paying before. So we need to start slow, but our ambition, if this works, is that we would look to do more of this, not less.
Thank you, Councillor Dupre.
Thank you. I'm sorry to be the nuisance here, but I've just reread the recommendation, and I'm struck that although the recommendation in section B sets out the length of the extension period, it nowhere sets out the length of the actual contract period that we are talking about agreeing. And I know that that is mentioned in various places in the body of the report, but the decision is the decision. And I think that we do need to be absolutely clear what we are authorising our officers to agree to. And I'm not proposing an amendment in that I don't wish in any way to alter the what is fundamentally being proposed, but I am wondering whether there should just be an alteration that lays out in the body of the recommendations what the time frame of the original contract period is.
Thank you. And it may be in terms of up to.
Yeah, apologies. We need to make that clear in the report. It's 12 plus 12. So we just need to make a note of that in the minutes. I think that we want to make that absolutely clear if it isn't been in the report.
We actually suggest that that is put in as a minor alteration of clarification to the recommendations themselves, particularly I think in B.
To confirm where you would like that in the recommendation.
So I'd suggest delegate authority for awarding and executing a contract of 12 months plus 12 months.
Yes. Yes.
For the provision of block contracts within the current, etc.
Extension is listed as being 12 months, so you don't need the and 12 months. You just need an initial period of 12 months.
Yes, that's right.
Because the extension is specified.
But it could be in that part of the recommendation. It's only a slight change.
Apologies, it should have been there anyway. So that's great to correct it.
It needs to refer to A as well with that 12-month first initial thing, doesn't it? So you've referred, Councillor Dupay has rightly raised that about B, but it should also be in A.
Yes, I'm very happy for that to be reflected. Thank you for that. And is that quite clear? So the reference to the contract length will be in both recommendation A and recommendation B. Is that acceptable?
Agreed.
Everyone agreed? Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions? Thank you. So this obviously is very contractual discussion, etc. A lot about the finance, but fundamentally this is about improving our provision. So if we could move to the vote, please. This is a vote in which co-opted members can also vote. Could I please have in favour of those amended recommendations, please raise your hand. I think that's unanimous. Thank you very much. So we have dealt with item 7, and so we move to item 8, which is recommissioning the National Child Weight Management Programme. Val Thomas is here to present it. Thank you very much. Welcome, Val.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. The National Child Measurement Programme is started in 2006, and it probably is one of our most important sources of information about children's health in terms of overweight and obesity. This programme is done in primary schools, in all mandated schools, all local authority schools across Cambridgeshire in reception and in year 6 on an annual basis. And not only does it provide us with excellent information about children's health in terms of their overweight and obesity, it also is an opportunity to engage with parents and give us the opportunity to engage with parents about their children's health, but also if there is an issue with their weight in terms of them providing the option of services to help them with it. So that's the background. The paper is asking for support for recommissioning the National Child Measurement Programme at the value set out in the paper. I think in terms of the key issues around the paper, ideally we would have liked to have placed this service in the Healthy Child Programme or in the Child Weight Measurement service. The reasons being that you would have a straight referral route from the Child Weight Measurement Programme into those services, and parents and carers could have the support quite easily. However, in procurement regulations, that is not allowable, and therefore the recommendation from procurement was that we take this out to a competitive tender. We did look at across east of England at where they were where the services were placed, and most of them were in the Healthy Child programme or sitting in child weight management services. But unfortunately, that option wasn't open to us. But the ambition to make sure there's close links between the NCMP and Healthy Child programme and child weight management services remained. The other element of the paper is that for the past since 2013, the National Child Measurement Programme has sat in the adult behaviour change services known locally as Healthy You. We are currently recommissioning those services, and it is essentially an adult service, and we thought it would be better to have this measurement programme closer to children's services. And we're moving to a place-based service, and this did not sit very well in that programme, and I think the option of getting better outcomes for having a close relationship with children's services is the reason for the recommendation of it being an independent procurement. It has also been a joint commission with Peterborough City Council since 2017, and we do recommend that that situation is maintained for a number of reasons. Firstly, there's a small team that carries out the survey. Splitting the funding would mean that the team would be divided as well, and we would lose the good relationships with schools that team has established. It would be a very small resource, not very attractive to the market, and you would not have any potential savings around management. This is a small, well, it's, as you can see, it's under £500,000 over 3 years and 2 months, and it is of small value. So those are our reasons for the contractual reasons for maintaining a shared contract. But it also, our Healthy Child programme has the same provider, Cambridgeshire Community Services, across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough. It also has many shared linkages, those two services, and work very closely together. So again, it's building those pathways into the services with a shared provider. The current child weight management service is jointly commissioned between Cambridgeshire County Council and Peterborough City Council. And again, that ease of access, ease of pathways is the reason why we are recommending a continuation of a shared service. The other area that we did look at benchmarking when we reviewed the service against other services in East of England, but the services are placed in so many different services. It's very hard. We're not comparing like with like, and we ended up going around in circles. So all I can say is that I have been commissioning this service and working with this service since 2006, and we have not increased its price since that. I think it's increased by 5k. And we have had excellent value for money from the team, and the national benchmark target is 90% of school children covered across Cambridgeshire and Peterborough, and they've maintained that at 92%. And the service, the small team knows the schools and very well accepted in schools. So you might sort of look strange length of contract, 3 years, 2 months. This is so that the end of this contract ends with the end of the child weight management service. There's no way we can align it with the Healthy Child programme, but by aligning it with the child weight management services, it would be so much easier for parents to work with those services and to provide the support and to have that direct linkage from being weighed and measured, getting advice from the weigh and measuring team, and then having that pathway into the services. So hence, in summary, we have to take it out to a competitive procurement. We are recommending that it is a joint procurement with Peterborough City Council for the value described in the paper, and to maintain those very close links with the related children's services.
Thank you very much indeed for that, and thank you for the report. Members, do you have questions? Councillor Goldsack.
A question for Val, but I think it's through you, Chair. Val, it might be useful for members of the committee if you would just introduce yourself. Sorry, you weren't invited to do so, but I think when we've got a speaker coming in,
Thank you.
I think there's a lot of people that don't know who people are. And obviously, I've worked with Val before, so it
That's
might be
an
useful.
excellent suggestion. Thank you, Val. Do introduce yourself.
Well, rather late, but rather late than never. I'm Val Thomas. I'm Deputy Director for Public Health.
And you have been with the authority for?
Yeah, I initially did this in the NHS, but I've been here since 2013, yes.
Thank you. Any questions about the report? Councillor Tong.
Hello, it's lovely to meet you. This isn't so much about the procurement itself, about figure one, because I think the value of this service is pretty obvious to everyone. And I think there's a lot that could be done to increase children's health across the county. I would love to know a bit more about, well, I'd love to know a little bit more about the impact of childhood obesity in these specific areas that are listed in figure one, because I think it's acknowledged in the report that the prevalence of childhood obesity very much does vary depending on deprivation. And in areas like Cambridge, for instance, there's quite a gulf in wealth. So I worry that these listing the different district authorities is just a bit too broad. And I think it would be interesting if, you had any information on more specific areas and how they are faced with childhood obesity and its linked to deprivation in those specific areas.
In terms of what's been done in those areas, in terms of the interventions, or the understanding of the data, for instance, of prevalence?
Both would be quite helpful.
We do have this report, the National Child Measurement Programme. We do get quite a granular report, and we can break it down to smaller areas. We have to be very careful with small numbers. So that's that. I would say there's that caveat to it as well. I think in terms of interventions, we have a very good, I think, schools-based service. I think it's now recently been renamed as a school-aged health improvement service, and that has a huge focus on overweight and obesity, working with schools. But I think it's also about working with communities, and I think children live in families and they live in communities. I think I mentioned earlier, we are currently commissioning the adult services as well at a place, and the whole thrust of that is working with communities around that awareness of overweight and obesity or an unhealthy weight, so that it doesn't become something out there, but it's something what the community can do as well, because we have services. But really, when you have over 60% of the adult population either overweight or obese, it really does have to be quite comprehensive and embedded locally.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Dupre, and after that, Councillor Osborne.
Thank you. I'm sorry, it's me again doing the same thing again, and I do this meeting after meeting after meeting. We haven't quite destroyed within the templates for these reports the phrase delegate responsibility, and I'm afraid it crops up in D. We cannot delegate responsibility, we can and do delegate authority. And the monitoring officer has on every occasion backed me up on that. So if we could please alter responsibility to authority, that would be really helpful. Thank you. Otherwise, no issues with the report.
I think that's noted. Thank you very much. Councillor Osborne.
Thank you. And I agree with what you just said. I'd like to send you an email, because I'd like to know more about your work, what you do once you find a child's obese, etc. So outside of this meeting, I'll contact you and find out more. Okay, thank you.
Please do. Thank you. And apologies that I will change the word. I won't use it again, Councillor Dupree.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Councillor Whelan.
Just on the figures and the percentages on the areas, how does that collate to the actual number of schools you visit, or you do the program in? Is it just local authority schools, or do you go to trust schools, or do you even go to independent schools? How does that work, please?
All maintained schools we have to. I should have said this is a mandated service. So all maintained schools we go in and weigh and measure. What we've started going into is special schools, because we know that children in those schools have a higher prevalence of an unhealthy weight. And that's true, that's been borne out. Our stats says about 75% as opposed to year 6, which is around 30%. So we do target those schools. In terms of the services like which I've got to get a school-aged health improvement service, it's very much about working with schools and encouraging them to accept support from the service. But we have, in terms of that, but we've also had a grant scheme that's been running for the past year and 18 months. And out of that, we've reached around 24,000 children, working with a whole number of schools across Cambridgeshire. And schools had small grants, and they could introduce a whole range of projects. And it's quite amazing what they've done, a whole range of physical activity and primarily physical activity, but also some diet and nutrition aspects as well. And we are currently evaluating that as well in terms of ongoing impact on children's behaviour as well.
Thank you very much. Any other questions or comments? If not, let us proceed to the vote. Again.
Sorry.
Oh, apologies. Did you want to? Oh, okay. No worries. We'll proceed to the vote. Co-opted members are entitled to vote, are eligible to vote on this report. So taking the recommendations as a whole, delegate authority rather than delegate responsibility in recommendation D. Can I please have a show of hands who's in favour? Thank you. And that is unanimous. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Val.
Did you? I was thinking about the timing that Lorna, Councillor Dupre mentioned. You might want to bear that in mind.
I think thank you very much for that reminder. I think we possibly do have one more item before we break. So that is item 9. That is Children in Care Residential Strategy, Additional Property, Ranjit Chambers. Thank you very much. You're very welcome. Please hold the microphone near you, and when you're ready, give us a summary. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Chair. My name is Ranjit Chambers. I'm the Service Director for Fostering, Adoption and Corporate Parenting. I'm here to present the paper for Children in Care Residential Strategy. It's an additional property request. So just to introduce the paper, the Children and Young People's Committee is being asked to approve the commissioning of a new Children in Care residential home. The home will provide care and support for children that present with complex needs and challenging behaviour. The residential home will be situated in Histon, Cambridgeshire. The home is a council-owned property for children with emotional and behavioural difficulties. It's an Ofsted registered provision and has met the regulatory requirements for a children's home. There are growing complexities for meeting the needs of children locally in Cambridgeshire. Majority of those children with complex needs tend to be placed outside of Cambridgeshire. This is an opportunity for us to provide homes locally for our children. By agreeing this property, this will enable us as corporate parents to provide homes for our children that are most vulnerable. Some of our children are placed in unregistered provisions, which are costly, and would enable us to move in our children into registered children's homes in line with the regulatory requirements. And this will also provide us opportunities to meet their needs locally. I'm just going to refer to the report at, bear with me please, at point 2.8, which talks about the outcomes for children and young people in care accessing the services. So by enabling us to utilise this home, the council will be able to respond more quickly and effectively to care, education and the mental health needs of our children through effective partnership working with local provisions. We have been able to test that for children that are placed in Cambridgeshire, where we are having timely responses from the partnership when children's complex needs are presented and they need acute support. This will also provide us a better opportunity to transition to foster care, reunification and family. Children will be placed back in Cambridgeshire within their local communities, and this will enable us to foster their relationships with their extended families. And the children with complex needs will receive appropriate tailored support through the registered children's service, which we want to have all our children placed in. And the children and young people will be placed within Cambridgeshire to maintain community, family, friends, connections, I've already said. So I open up to any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor
Thank you, Chair. Could you just give a bit more clarity on 2.7 and the differences in savings between solo use for the property or dual use, please? So this is your table stating that we're looking at around £285,000 of savings for solo use and 96,000-ish for dual use. I may be being a bit dense here, but that seems like a massive gap in numbers, and I would have thought that the dual use would bring more savings than it has. So some clarity would be lovely.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll do my best to answer that. So the reason for the difference is the needs of the children. So a child that needs to be placed on their own in their own home at the moment, there would be a larger weekly fee. So if we were to move a child at a higher rate who's currently costing £19,000 into a home that's costing £14,000, we're going to get a bigger saving than if we move two children who are currently paying £11,000 each for. A child that's living on their own can't live with another child, so we couldn't take two children on 19,000. Apologies for talking about children in terms of money, but it's different margins and different needs for different children. Does that answer the question?
Lovely, that absolutely clears it up. And if I may, just as local member, it's lovely to see the facilities in the division I represent being used in such a wonderful way. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bradnam.
That's all right, it's been clarified. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other? Councillor Dupre.
And I'm sorry, and it's me again on a similar point again, in that the recommendation C gives the full length of the contract period, including all the extensions, not the original 5-year period plus 2 plus 2 plus 1 in the report. So just wondering whether that ought to be clarified within the recommendation itself.
Just say that again, which recommendation would you?
It's recommendation C, which simply says subsequent a contract and subsequent extension periods up to 10 years. It doesn't give the 5-year, which is the base of the contract.
Yeah, so I think obviously that needs to be included. Thank you very much for clarifying our recommendation. Councillor Demery-Holman. I do beg your pardon. It's Councillor Gilsett next.
Thank you. Off the back of the new provision that's been commissioned in SOAM, I really welcome this. I think this is a really good idea, a really good move forward. Just one point on 4.6 of the report, I just want to check my understanding. So if I run through my understanding, then you can tell me whether I'm right or not. As an externally commissioned service, so we are buying this service from a provider. The service would be contract managed by the Children's Commissioning Team. That's Cambridgeshire County Council's commissioning team would manage the external provider. Then the service will be quality assured through regular contract management meetings, quality assurance visits, review of monthly regulation, etc., etc. the only external opinion on the whole provision of the service is the Ofsted report. Is that correct?
Yeah, so Ofsted is the regulator, and they would undertake their regulatory visits, and then us within Children's Commissioning are external to the provider, so we would be external to them, undertaking quality assurance and contract management meetings.
Okay. For many reasons, and somebody mentioned it a little while ago, and I think it was yourself. I'm reluctant to refer to children's special educational needs, etc., in terms of pounds, shillings, and pence. And it's my old adage here, I assume that with the externally commissioned service, there's a set of service level agreements that will be in place that determine what they will be expected to deliver by when, how, etc. Now, again, picking up on Councillor Goodliffe's earlier comments, many of them will be qualitative. Some of those will be the opposite, but it's a good report. It's a great idea. I just think we need a little bit more information in here about what it is we're buying. Because all I can see is an externally commissioned service, and I just think we need a little bit more information.
Is there anything you could provide now that would assist Councillor Goldsack?
Yep. So we would be expecting the provider to be registered with Ofsted, so they would go through Ofsted's registration process to ensure that they are compliant with legislation and all of the regulatory requirements. We have a service specification that's been worked on with Children's Commissioning, social care colleagues at senior and social worker level to ensure all of our requirements are set out in terms of quality and their working partnership with the council. And the terms and conditions, again, would have clauses in there that allow us to manage the quality and exit from any contracts where we're not receiving the quality of care that we're expecting.
Thank you very much. I hope that is helpful. I've got Councillor Damery-Holman.
Thank you for allowing me to come back, Chair. I just wanted, this is a very broad question, so apologies, but this is quite a long contract, and obviously we have local government reorganisation looming. I didn't see it referenced anywhere in the report. Could you just give us a little bit of detail on who the responsibility for maintaining this service may fall to in the event of LGR? It is a difficult one, so not expecting a.
So it's standard process now for us to have break clauses in all of our contracts in terms of local government reform. Unfortunately, we don't have any further clarity, I understand, in terms of where the borders may be. But this provision, there would be a break clause should it not be needed. However, I anticipate that whoever the lucky area is will get this service.
Knowing that there's a break clause in the event of it is very reassuring. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other questions at this point? No? Councillor Bradnan, quickly, yes?
Thank you. I just wanted to say how very glad I am to see that we are looking to provide accommodation for our children who have very particular and complex needs within the county. So thank you for the work that you've done in drawing this up.
Thank you very much. I'm sure we all echo those comments. So now, unless there's any further or comments, let's move to the vote. And co-opted members again are entitled to vote on this report. The recommendations, we take into account the contract length as well in section C, in recommendation C. Can I please have a show of hands who is in support? Thank you. Unanimous again. Thank you very much. If I may, members, I think it would be a good time to have a 10-minute break. So there's still time to go down and get a drink from the cafeteria. We'll resume in at 15:54. Thank you very much. We should reconvene. Can I confirm that we're still online? Yeah, the link is live. Thank you very much. I hope everyone's had an opportunity to have a proper break. So we come to item 10, which is the finance monitoring report. This is the outturn for the last financial year, and this is going to be introduced by Martin Purbrook, the Executive Director for Children Education and Families, ably assisted by Sarah Callahan and Steve Howarth. So would you like to go ahead?
Thank you very much. And assuming you'll have read the papers, you will see the overall position for children education and families, not including the dedicated schools grant budget to the end of year 24-25, showed an overspend of 6.92 million. And key areas to note in that: the external placements end of year ended at 7.5 million overspent, and that's some of the issues that we've heard about already in today's papers. This is primarily driven by an increase in the number of young people requiring care and limited availability of suitable and in-county providers, leading to higher numbers of young people in residential and unregistered placements. The shortage of children's care placements is a national issue, and it is anticipated that the block booking from the paper earlier will have a positive impact on some of these costs. Some of this is offset to a small degree by the year-end vacancy factor for children education and families, overachieving by 1.4 million net of agency spend. And this has been achieved through a combination of workforce controls and having roles in some cases that are harder to recruit to within the service. Within the education strategic management budget, the final underspend of 2.06 million is being reported as a result of the continuation of the Household Support Fund, which has released core funding previously identified to provide free school meal vouchers during the school holidays, which is very helpful. The Home to School Transport Service ended the year with a 2.64 million overspend. The demand underpinning escalated transport costs is driven by a combination of increasing numbers of children and young people meeting the eligibility criteria for transport, and also inflationary costs within the transport sector. Regarding the dedicated schools grant, there is Appendix 1B, which provides a breakdown of all DSG spend within children education and family services. A revised cumulative DSG deficit of 40 million was brought forward into 24-25, and to the end of March, a net in-year DSG overspend was 22.83 million, which includes assumptions in respect of the early years position, which is dependent on spring term payments. The report and dependencies contain more detail about all budget over and underspends, as well as comments about action being taken to mitigate and to manage spend across children education and families. Happy to take questions from members with the support of Sarah and Stephen at the back.
So thank you very much. Some really significant financial implications there for us to understand. This report is to note, but questions of clarification information are very welcome. Does anyone have any comments? Councillor Goldson?
Thank you, and thank you for the report. It's question about the lot of what we've heard, and we've already seen some action plans in place to, I think, address some of the issues. But my question here is with the outturn variance of 6.920 million, that is, the question I have is what was known and what was forecast against what was actually happened, and what was the difference? So what's that analysis? I know there's commentary in the report, which I have read, but I'm really looking for an official response to why did this happen? I can see what we're trying to do about it, but what can be done about this not having 6.9 million overspend next year? Or is it an external effect or whatever, while still providing the minimum level of services that we need to provide?
Can I ask, would it be correct to say you're asking what could have been foreseen, or what was foreseen?
Well, I think no, I am actually asking the second, which is what was foreseen and what have we learned by what mistakes we've made on what was foreseen?
So I think that there was, I'm going to take the children's external placements as a good example. So I think there was forecasting done to increase the budget last year going into 24-25, which assumed a number of places based on previous years' experience, looking at the number of children that will be coming into care and the numbers of children leaving care and what the net increase would be over that period of time. What happened in year pretty much doubled that over the course of the year. So we ended up with far more children coming into care, and that combined with the complications in the children's residential and placement care marketplace, so the national shortage that we experienced quite acutely in Cambridgeshire, actually, it was almost a double whammy. So whilst there was forecasting done, the numbers of children that came into care outstripped that forecast. What we could learn from that, we based the forecast on not just 1 year, but several years. So this greater increase will be factored into the coming year's forecast, and we will do a lot of work looking at the groups of young children and teenagers that came into care, so that we can hopefully refine that year on year to make sure that we don't fall into this same situation. It is a complicated analysis. As you can appreciate, you just don't know who is going to come into care to a certain degree.
If I could come back, I thank you for that. That really does help. I get that. Let's take an example of school provision. We're talking about potential growth years, and we're looking at future schools' needs and when they're at saturation point or burst years and all of that sort of stuff. Then the population birth rate drops, and actually we can push that spend further down the line because it's not needed, because the schools can cope for a longer period of time. I recognise that's a much more mathematical dynamic situation than the one that you're dealing with. What I don't understand is what caused the doubling of the, is there a single cause or a few causes of the doubling of the number of children that needed residential care?
The largest cohort of young people that came into our care over the course of the year were unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, and that contributed significantly to the growth in the children in care in Cambridgeshire. We are part of the National Transfer Scheme, so we don't have control over how many children we get allocated from that scheme. We do have a grant that covers some of those costs, but the numbers that we have in our care stay with us into care leave. As they become care leavers, they stay with us. Our duties to them don't cease at 18, so the costs are expanded over a period of time, but we have no way of controlling that necessarily. What we can do is try and make sure that we find the best and most suitable in-county accommodation for them, which we can control the costs and quality. And some of those will be in the block booking for 16, 17-year-old supported accommodation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lowe.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. On with Appendix 2, 7, 8 and 9, they've got underspends. And the main one that's surprising for me is the family support and safeguarding, because that's sort of like the stage before children go into care or into residential homes. What can we put in place so that we actually utilise that going forwards? Because I think it's, I know you have the big nanny teams out in the States and things, and having worked in children, schools and families, in another council, it was always my concern that why aren't we having more support going into the families to try and keep the children at home rather than taking them out, because it obviously impacts both parents and children.
So despite the complications despite the budget issues we just spoke about with children in care, we actually have a relatively low rate across the region of children that come into care in Cambridgeshire. We do keep the vast majority of children at home until they need to come into our care. I think we have the third lowest rate of entry into care across the 11 local authorities in the eastern region. So what we are doing is keeping children at home, which is great, which is why it's so easy for us to track the different cohorts and where that change is having an impact on the numbers of children that we've got into care and what cohorts they come from. Some of those in 7, 8, and 9 are grant carry forwards. So as we were previously part of the family safeguarding model, which came with a grant and also came with contracts which we terminated early. So that gave us some money to hold back, which we could carry forward, and the same with targeted support. So we will be looked at. They largely go to offset overspends elsewhere. So it all, whichever way around it goes, it all goes to support children. But I wanted to reassure you that we do work incredibly hard to keep children at home as long as we possibly can. Obviously, there is a percentage of children that have to come into care.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Councillor Osborne.
Yeah, I'm talking from an experience of a neighbour who used to work in one of these care homes, and some of these children are not just naughty children; they can be downright evil, smashing cars out, running away from home, and they're on drugs. There was one lad that ran away for nearly a month. He was on drugs in Peterborough. That's where the police found him. So it's not just a case of somebody's been a bad boy or a bad girl. It's a case of they've learnt from their bad parents how not to react correctly. So I understand everything that's going through at the moment. And that's why one of the reasons I wanted to join this panel. Thank you.
Can I just come back on that? I think it's just important to recognise that any child in care is a child that's experienced early childhood trauma, and it's that trauma which can often lead to difficult behaviours and emotional responses to challenging situations which children and young people find it difficult to manage themselves. And sometimes that can manifest itself in behaviours like you described, which can be difficult. But I understand what you're saying, but I do think it's important that we as a committee also remember that under that behaviour is a child that's experienced something incredibly difficult and something that has really changed the way that they are able to manage their own emotions, and that's why they behave in that way, often actually putting themselves at significant risk rather than other people. And really what we need to make sure that they get is good quality, consistent care, which enables them to become an adult which can contribute to society, learn what they want to do and achieve their ambitions as well. I recognise also your comment about coming from a home where that has been the normal behaviour. We have a really super targeted support service which spreads across, which is really a very broad offer for many families. So we can't enable every family to make positive changes, but the fact that we do have one of the lower rates of children entering care is evidence, I think, that lots of our targeted support does do a good job of supporting families to make positive changes earlier on to prevent those children needing to come into care. Like I said, there will always be children whose experiences are so damaging that they need us to care for them. But we're always looking to ensure that the care that they get is the best quality.
No, Councillor Goodliff.
Sorry, just to add to what Martin said, obviously we also have a responsibility for these children. They are our children under the corporate parenting legislation. They're very much our responsibility. And I think we need to be very careful about labelling children as naughty children, that what they are doing is reacting to the situations that they have been in, which are of no control of their own.
Thank you. Councillor Bradnam.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to make a similar point following what Martin has said, that at one of the council meetings in the previous term, we issued every single councillor with a card reminding the councillors that we made 10 promises to children in our care, because these are our children. I don't have any children of my own, but we have 760 odd children who are in the care of us as councillors, and we made 10 promises to them as children as to how we would listen to them, meet their needs where they need it, in the way that they need to hear from us. and that we'd enable them to thrive as children. That little book of promises is in my purse and I carry it with me. And similarly, with our children leaving care, our young people leaving care, we made a series of pledges to them just in the last year, which were our pledges to our care leavers to ensure that we would absolutely give them the opportunity to do the things that they want to do as children, to be the best person they can be, and that we can support them as we would as parents. Many of you will be parents. And it's really important that we recognise that sometimes the children's behaviour and the young people's behaviour can be challenging because they have had a very challenging time beforehand. And we can't always do everything right, but what we must try to do is to be there and meet them where their needs are. And as Councillor Goodliff says, not to label them, but to draw alongside them and let them be the best children they can be. Interestingly, when I went to the Care Leavers event last year, we encountered a provider who was offering opportunities for young people. And he said to me he would always much rather work with a young person leaving care because these young people are amazingly resilient, they're amazingly full of ideas, and they absolutely understand what is important to them. So I think what we need to be mindful of is the opportunities that these young people give us. So just to
Thank you
remind
very
us.
much.
Thank you.
I'm mindful that this item, although this is a really important set of points that members have made, this item is really about our financial outturn. And do members have any further questions of Martin and the team on that matter? Well, thank you very much, and thank you for the report. In a way, it's a really huge subject, our financial, the financial background and outturn. I'm sure we return to this every committee. It's to note only, so thank you very much. The next item, item 11, again, it's to note an update on the school uniform guidance. Sarah, would you like to, Sarah Callan, would you like to introduce this, please?
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Sarah Callahan, Service Director for Education. So the objective of this report is for members to note the response from schools to updated guidance with regard to school uniforms. So we had in order to understand how schools were responding to the guidance, we undertook a survey, and initially, we didn't get a great response. We did an initial survey back in June 23. We redid the survey in November 23, and we got a much greater uptake with 191 out of 210 primary schools responding, 27 of our 33 secondary schools, and 8 out of 12 special schools. The objective of the survey was to see how compliant the schools were against the updated policy, and the policies were really concerned with are costs associated with school uniforms prohibitive. What we were able to understand was that a high percentage, 93% of our primaries, school uniform costs were under £50. For our secondaries, 52% were under £75. However, 96% of our secondary schools do offer support to families who are struggling to meet those costs, and the report does detail some of the ways that they go about that. And we were also able to identify that there wasn't a strong dependency on branded items, which are often quite difficult for parents and more expensive. So really the report just illustrates how are our schools responding to the new policy guidance, and gives us some level of reassurance that the costs associated with school uniforms do not appear to be wholly prohibitive, but where they may be more difficult for some families to meet those costs, there are mechanisms in place across our schools, including our academy schools, across primary, secondary and special schools, to enable those families to have some additional support. So it's just for members to note, and I'm happy to take any questions or point of clarification. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Damarie Hellman, please.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this report. Firstly, I just want to note the great success. It's really wonderful to see that we're doing such a good job in the county. Costs are low, and actually the response rates, I'm delighted to see. Such a wonderful uptick. Really well done to you and the team. I was just wondering if you could give a few details on what the sort of next steps on this in this area are. Are we going to continue to be monitoring this? And if you could just give a brief overview on moving forward. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So obviously, the guidance, there's two policies and we've included the links to them. The one that is statutory is around the costs associated with school uniforms. So we'll continue to have oversight through our regular network meetings. So we have established meetings with our primary heads, secondaries and MAT CEOs. So that'll provide a mechanism for us to have continued oversight with our schools.
Thank you. Councillor Tong.
Hello, firstly, I'd like to thank you for this report. I think that school uniform is one of those really underappreciated costs by many people, and representing quite a deprived area in Cambridge, you'd be surprised about how much I hear about the cost of school uniform and how much it actually impacts people's lives and how much it makes a big deal for them to have systems where they can do things like share and buy second-hand uniforms. Something I wanted to briefly ask about was the first survey, because obviously the second survey was very successful in the number of responses we got, which is really important. We have to be consulting with schools to try and work out how we help them better. I was wondering what went wrong the first time to have so few responses, just so we can have a think about what we learned from that and can learn from that going forward.
Yeah, I think it's a fair comment, and I think it's about understanding the implications and our mechanisms for communication, but also the fact that the policy regarding the costs is a statutory requirement. So obviously the fact that that updated guidance is statutory, obviously it does have an influence in terms of schools' engagement with that. But I think we're always reviewing our communication mechanisms, and I think it's about how do we articulate clearly what is the objective of this survey and what benefit will it have, because schools do get inundated with a lot of requests for information. So I think the learning for us is about how we frame that in a way that's useful for schools. So I think that's something that we're constantly evolving and learning about in terms of our communication.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bradnam.
Thank you very much. And I'm trying to remember if this request to do a survey actually came from Councillor Michael Atkins before. I'm not sure, it may have done, but I remember he was concerned about school uniform in the previous term. So I'm very glad to see this coming forward, and so that we have the analysis of, and well, so much response from the schools, and Councillor Tong is right, it's been, and others are right, it's been very gratifying to see the amount of schools who have responded. But also what came out of that discussion was the inventive ways that the schools themselves were finding to enable to support families with uniform, so that it was making a totally normal thing about sharing school uniform, returning school uniform and doing a bring and share shop sort of thing, so that it wasn't stigmatized or anything. It was just what everybody did. And that has really, I think, helped parents to feel that's a perfectly okay thing to do, so that children can't then, finger point and say, oh, you're in somebody else's jacket sort of thing. So I think that's been really positive, and I'm very gratified to see that in so many cases, you know, the whole set of school uniform can be or what's necessary. And I think the other thing, yes, that was the other thing, that the schools have undertaken to make sure that there's only 2 or 3 items that they need to have as branded. And I think that helps. And the reduction in costs that can achieve, which I think is really important. So I think it's a great piece of work. Well done to the schools for responding so positively. And I think the monitoring of this ongoing, if we get further questions from parents, would be very useful. But your next steps were perfectly sensible. So thank you very much.
Thank you. And I do believe there was a motion to full council about school uniform, which was widely supported in the last session. So I think a lot of this work has come out of that, and the concern that obviously the burden on many families of the cost of school uniform is prohibitive, and really supporting and encouraging schools to find less costly ways to maintain their uniform policies. Councillor Goldsack.
Thank you. Very quick one. In 2.3, paragraph 2, it mentions that the schools received an email from the Executive Director on the 27th of March, which outlined the findings of this report. Could we see a copy of that? And could I suggest that in future it would be really useful for the department, the directorate, if all members saw a copy of what you were going out to schools, because we are constantly contacted by people from the school, parents of the schools, etc., and that would just empower us a little bit more, rather than having to signpost, pick up the phone and say, can somebody help me, please?
Thank
Yeah,
you.
certainly we can pick that up as an action. Yeah.
Thank you. That would be helpful. It's a constant for members that we hear about these communications from the council. And it's always good to be cited on what those communications are. Any other? Oh, Councillor Dupre.
Thank you. Not a comment on the wording of the recommendations this time, but a question of broader principle. We're told in the report that there appears to be strong encouragement from the government for schools to adopt a uniform. We're also told that schools, special schools, don't seem to require a uniform perhaps quite so much. I just wondered whether there were any schools in Cambridgeshire that don't do uniform at all, and if so, whether there is any kind of measurement of whether that decision not to have a uniform affects morale or ethos or behaviour or anything else. Do we know of any non-uniform schools, mainstream schools, and do we work at all with them and with others to look at the effects in principle of having a uniform or not?
Thank you. Who would like to answer that?
Yeah, I do believe we do have some schools. I'll have to check the numbers. I think your question in terms of special schools, I think that some children with particular needs obviously can sometimes be very sensitive to fabric and things like that. So I think that's why it's more relaxed in our special school sector. But I can confirm the numbers of schools that don't choose to have a school uniform within mainstream, and also get a sense of what's the rationale underpinning that. Because if you look at the policy guidance, it does talk about having a uniform in terms of bolstering the ethos of the school. So, but particularly for special schools, I know that often that's a pragmatic decision, isn't it?
Thank you very much. Are there any other comments or questions about this? No, we are asked to note how schools have responded. So thank you very much for that report and the work. And it's important that this information has been shared with head teachers and governors. If I may come to item 12, please, recommissioning drug and alcohol treatment services for children and young people. This is to be introduced by Val Thomas.
should I introduce myself?
We now know who you are. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right. This paper went through the Adults and Health Committee in January, and it's come here for information. It's basically we have to go out to recommission the Children's and Young People's Substance Misuse Service, the Drug and Alcohol Service. The recommendation in the paper is that we have another Section 75 with the current service, which is run by Cambridge and Peterborough Foundation Trust, NHS Foundation Trust, through their cases service, which is a bespoke service for young people. And the reason why this was recommended was that it's quite a unique service in many ways, and many areas also express their envy about our service locally, as we do have some, I think, some advantages. One, it's evolved over time and very much developed in response to local need, but it also is a service for co-occurring conditions. I think most children and young people that are in substance misuse services also experience mental health issues as well. This service is able to treat both issues, both conditions. And alongside that, it actually has an adolescent psychiatrist, which are very hard to have in a service. There's not enough of them effectively. This, alongside the fact that they have had, they perform very well, and there are some details in the paper about that. One, in terms of how they've got people back into treatment following the pandemic, and then their planned exits, which are quite important in terms of the children that come into the service actually go out with a completed treatment, with a positive outcome. So we've always been pleased with the performance of this service, but also because it has these unique characteristics which many services do not have. The other issue in the paper, and was one of the reasons why it went to Adults and Health, was that many areas commission adult and children's services together. It's not recommended in this paper, as it can lead to some disinvestment in children and young people's services, particularly in times of financial pressures. And also it becomes less of a bespoke service for children and young people. And hence that was a recommendation which again was supported by Adults and Health as well. And so the recommendations in the paper were that it's another Section 75 with the CPFT cases service, and that would be for 7 years as well, with breaks at years 3 and 5, and that it should obviously maintain this as being a bespoke service for children and young people.
Thank you very much indeed. Questions for Val? Councillor Whelan.
Is there a programme to actually, before, there's a programme obviously on the treatment of, but for prevention in schools, especially I think there's quite a problem with vaping and things like that in some schools, but certainly at the upper end of primary schools. And I think, is there a programme going forward to actually highlight the problems of that and how to deal with that?
Okay, I think there's vaping doesn't normally is in this treatment service, but very often if a young person is vaping, but particularly vaping never started smoking, and also we don't recommend vaping at all for under 18. So if it sits alongside a young person being treated in the service for alcohol or drug misuse, then that would be picked up as well. There is a program. There are numerous programs that working with schools around substance misuse. In fact, in this particular service, some of the clinicians do still go into schools when they have capacity. They're usually very well received. They are very experienced clinicians, and children and young people seem to respond very well to them. But there's also part of, mentioned earlier, the SHIP service, the school-aged health improvement service, that also covers drugs and alcohol misuse as well, and works with schools to help them understand the issues. They do training with schools around it. And also internally, the PSHE service here in Children's Service also does some work with schools around substance misuse.
Thank you very much. Councillor Demery-Holman.
Thank you,
Val,
Chair.
excuse me, Val, would you mind switching
I'm
your
sorry.
microphone off while Lawrence
Thank-
asks a question?
Thank you, Chair. I think I'll probably save what could be a raft of questions to speak with you outside, Val, if you don't mind. But I just wanted to briefly comment. It's wonderful to see that we're doing such good work in the area on this. You know, the data you've presented here is really positive. Knowing that we have a dedicated service to children and young people, given neurological developments, the impact that substance misuse can have on their development, to be able to hone in on that is wonderful. And I just really wanted to highlight in 6.4 that we're acknowledging the wider factors that influence substance misuse. It is so important in tackling these issues, and I just want to commend colleagues for the wonderful work being done here and say that I fully and strongly support the recommendation.
Thank you very much indeed. Are there any other Councillor Lowe?
Thank you. I was just wondering, is there any evidence of babies that are born to a mother who has a drug or alcohol misuse issue that it carries on with, what am I trying to say, with the child going through the years?
I think there's sort of two elements to that question. Are there any clinical symptoms that would continue? And also, are children who live with parents or carers that misuse substances, are they at higher risk? I think with the latter, we do work very in the adult services where there are children involved or are children of people or patient or clients using the service, then we certainly give additional support to those families. For the clinical conditions that arise from substance misuse during pregnancy, I think there are numerous outcomes from that, but I think they are carefully monitored through early childhood to see if there's any ongoing repercussions, because it could be quite wide-ranging, the clinical impacts on those.
No, thank you. That's brilliant. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bradnam.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you very much, Val. Sorry, it's on. Yeah. Thank you. It relates to two things. One is, I think it's really helpful that this service is taking the opportunity of encountering these people to cover, to explore and identify other unmet needs. And I think that's a really sensible and coherent way of approaching it. But picking up on a question another councillor has asked, are you increasingly are you finding that people who are needing this service have started their encounters with drugs misuse through vaping? I mean, it's the other way around. Are you finding that these are people who've because crazily vaping was created, wasn't it, to as a means to encourage adults to stop smoking? And now we've got the reverse happening, where it's encouraging young people to start vaping. And interestingly, just in a little petrol station I happen to drop into quite regularly, talked to the young man there who said he had vaped, and he said, yeah, it starts you on that track. So I just wondered whether that's being picked up as well.
I think the transition from vaping into misusing other substances, I don't think that's been documented widely as yet. I think inevitably there will be cases of it because, but there'll be other factors influencing as well. There are many factors that influence young people that take up or misuse substances. Certainly I haven't seen any correlation between vaping and in large numbers of vaping and ongoing drug misuse. But I think it's something that I think we're all watching what's going to happen to children who vape. from a clinical perspective, but also from does it lead to other substances? I think there's always been that sort of that cigarette smoking will automatically lead to drug misuse, but actually in reality it's never as high as people think, and you just don't hear about cigarette smoking leading to substance misuse nowadays, because fewer and fewer young people are smoking. They actually are vaping. But that seems to have stabilized somewhat, the vaping. But even so, it's something I agree. I think it's something to be watched, because there is that kind of linkage in it. But I haven't seen any evidence date. But you know, it's emerging all the time around vapes. And in fact, I chaired a summit this morning around smoking, and the last time I missed it was about, we had an expert from UCL talking about vaping in young people. So I'm hoping to get the slides on that and the feedback on it.
Yes, if it's relevant.
Thank you. The reason I asked that question is because vaping itself is addictive.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's what I'm concerned about.
Yeah.
This is what the young man in the petrol station told me. He said, "Oh yeah, it's addictive. The actual behaviour is addictive, and as well as perhaps, I don't know whether the products are, but I think that's something to be aware of."
It is something to be watched, and I think addictions are complex, and it ranges from chemical addictions to behavioural addictions and all those societal pressures. So it is complex, and I think the interventions therefore tend to have to consider the individual situation in it as well, and the potential risks. But I think that we're getting to understand more of it, but there's still an awful lot we don't understand.
Thank you very much. Does anyone else have a question or comment? In that case, thank you very much, Val, for this report. And may I move to the vote? And although this, in general, the service has been already commissioned, we are being asked to vote on the recommendations, which do have contract length, and it's okay. So we have. Yes, I understand that. That's right. So the point is that this service has already been commissioned, but this committee is being asked to support it. So could I please have a show of hands on who supports this? We all do. Thank you very much. It's unanimous. Thank you very much, Val. Final item on the agenda is a number of matters: the agenda plan, the training plan, and appointments to internal advisory groups and outside bodies. So what I propose to do is to take any updates or questions about the agenda plan first, the training plan, and then to discuss the nominations to appointments to internal advisory groups or outside bodies. So are there any further updates to the agenda plan, Tamar?
I circulated an updated plan to committee yesterday, and it's also uploaded onto the webpage.
Thank you very much. Are there any comments or questions about that? Councillor Goldsack.
Yeah, I carry a slight concern that we've had a very busy and procurement-led agenda today. The next meeting is scheduled for the 9th of September, and that's a reserve date with nothing against it. So we're now not meeting again to the 7th of the 10th. So that's 4 months away. That seems a long while for officers to get decisions made, and we don't really want to force them to be going down the route of extraordinary decisions and backdating them. So it seems a big gap to me. I wondered why.
Yes, so happily I can correct that. We are meeting in September. That date.
The updated agenda plan has the it should be the updated one.
Apologies if it's not there. Yeah, apologies if it's not there, but the plan is it should include that we are going to use that reserve date because, as you rightly say, there is a great deal. There is a great deal to come to that committee. So apologies, but that will be corrected. Are there any comments on the committee training plan? Councillor Bradnam.
Just on the agenda plan, I was just wondering, as Councillor Goldsacker said, we've had a lot of items to this committee. I wondered, are we expecting, and I'm sure Tamar has got this in her mind, any of these updates on those reports to come back to us? And I haven't really thought about it cleverly enough to think which ones they might be. But from this agenda, are we expecting anything else to come back to us as an update? I mean, for example, the one that occurs to me is how we're getting on, for example, with the care home in Harston. I just wondered if any of that was expected to come back to that meeting in September.
I think sorry, Martin, do you want? Yes, that I think we just wait to see the updated agenda plan. I think that's the way to go with that. It is on the website, and you're very welcome to look at it. Are there any other comments? No. Thank you very much.
Was on the agenda plan. The other question I wanted to ask was whether the training, which I think is further on, isn't it? Whether all of those training opportunities will be open to all members, because as we said before, all members are corporate parents. So anything relevant could go to not just members, but to all members of the council. They should be available.
I think the answer to that is yes.
Good.
Thank you very much for that and clarifying it, because yes, we are all members are corporate parents, and there'll be more of that to follow.
Just at page 144, under, for example, item 2, corporate parenting roles, responsibilities of substitute members with responsibilities to represent corporate parenting. The members listed as attending are CYP members and corporate parenting subcommittee. So logically, it ought to include all members.
Thank you for that. Any other comments? Nope. Thank you very much. So we come to the nominations for internal and external bodies. Now, we won't be able to decide all of it today because we've had nominations. We've had some nominations from the Lib Dem group and the Labour group, but we haven't had any other nominations. So this is an opportunity for anyone else to put forward nominations, and then we'll go off and consider, the nominations to vacancies, and if there are any clashes, we'll come back and have a conversation. But do I have any other nominations? Councillor Tong.
Just to check, am I allowed to nominate one of my colleagues for a position on an outside body?
Yes, I believe so, unless membership is restricted in some way, but Tamar will know whether it is or not.
Well, I'm confident that there will be other nominations for these, but if there do happen to be any room left over, my colleague Darren Green would like to be nominated for the Cambridgeshire Music Forum and the Cambridgeshire Schools Forum.
Any other? Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Chair. Would you like me to request our leader of reform to put nominations forward?
Ideally by the end of today or as soon as possible. Thank you.
That's not going to happen.
Okay. Well, the thing is that these nominations are sort of a rolling thing.
Yeah.
So please do come forward when you can. And if there's a vacancy, you can slot right in. And if there isn't a vacancy, we may have to wait.
Thank you, Chair.
Is that all right? Any other from the Conservative group? Right. Thank you. Independent?
I'm happy to slot in if you've got space and you need someone.
Thank you very much for that offer. We may very well be in touch. Thank you. I will take those points on advisement and we'll reissue the a more final list based on who's volunteered for what and how many vacancies there are. Thank you very much, everyone. This brings us to the end of today's business. And as we have discussed, we will meet next on the 9th of September. So thank you very much.